Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal EMAC coming to you on Sunday night, a little NFL live before lock. We're continuing now into the fifth hour of Awesemo DFS content for NFL. I'm joined by Matt Savoca, who's already been on a show as well today. Matt, how are you doing? This is the first time we get to work together here.
EMAC, I am thrilled to be finally part of the EMAC 2024 campaign. This is so exciting for me. I'm thrilled to finally be here. I haven't done a Sunday night showdown live before lock, so I couldn't be more happy to be here breaking down some Steelers Chargers. I've got some Steelers family members or in the in-law family, and I'm excited to break it down. I know they're excited to hear what I have to say.
All right, that's a good one. When I was a kid, way back in the day, many moons ago, that was the first year I watched football. The Seattle Seahawks didn't exist, and then so I was like in first or second grade, and it was one of the Pittsburgh Cowboys Super Bowls, and so I was a huge Steeler fan. So like literally, the Cowboys were America's team, and that was Pittsburgh's like 4 Super Bowls in 6 years or whatever. So when we'd go to our local store in the rural farming town in the middle of Washington State, there'd be Cowboys jerseys or until the Seahawks showed up, and the Seahawks were just so bad because they were an expansion team, of course. But I didn't realize that they were new, because to me this whole game was new. So that was I was a big fan of Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, those guys way back in the day. So always a soft spot for the Steelers, but that's kind of faded over the years, especially after.
This was like 1928, 1929, somewhere around then.
It was right after the Dust Bowl. Took
cool.
care of that. Yeah.
Gotcha,
No, it's like 1976, 1977, well before you turkeys were walking the earth. But yes, it was a long time.
Well, Seahawks never walked the earth, so I mean, just saying.
That is true. They tend to soar. All right, we've got a lot of fun today. We had a lot of fun going on in the earlier games. I think we got a couple still coming on. My Seahawks are losing. Kansas City and Dallas have forgotten how to score touchdowns. That's just disappointing. And then looks like that the Raiders game must have just finished, because it's not on my live section of my board anymore. So 32-13 Cincinnati. Talk about Jekyll and Hyde teams. It's certainly Cincinnati this year. Who knows what we're going to get from them, but somehow they put up 32 points with just 148 passing yards. So exactly as we scripted this out today. It was all over the place. A lot of random touchdowns in the early slate. And I don't think there was anything else big that happened.
Yeah, nothing else really big. No big scores from any players. No wild, out of control things. Philadelphia, New Orleans goes over its total. Surprisingly, Jalen Hurts a couple rushing touchdowns. Oh, was there somebody in the Indianapolis game who scored a couple points? Yeah, I think Jonathan Taylor broke the slate. Oh yeah, Carson Wentz. Yes, sorry about the over props on any passing yards props that you put on Carson Wentz, because Jonathan Taylor just absolutely destroys things. He looked incredible, not just on the stats, but he was breaking tackles all over the place. I can't wait to break down how many evaded tackles he had in this game. That one touchdown run where he broke multiple tackles to get into the end zone, already being played all over TV. I mean, if he didn't have it, it wasn't impossible to break even at least, but in order to win anything, he was the have-to-have-it score you needed today.
Yeah, I'm afraid to even look. It's just been a disastrous weekend. I kind of gave up as soon as I saw he got his third touchdown, and I had 1% of him in my lineups. So, Jokic is out tonight. I'll have to tweak some lineups there. No problem, though. I've got contingency plans for that. But we've got moving parts. NBA basketball, very redundant there. NBA on Sundays. A lot of weird stuff always happening. Now, the Jokic news wasn't particularly weird, but there's always some silly late scratch because everybody's focused on football, and all of a sudden they're slipping one by here. So pay attention to that out there. Of course, we've got all the Awesemo projections and tools behind the scenes. That stuff doesn't tip off till 8 and then 8:30, but there are quite a few games out there. Our sponsor Prize Picks, of course, does have NBA content available, or NBA wagers, shall I say. So basically what Prize Picks has done is they've created prop betting, player props, both from a fantasy point perspective as well as the stats you're used to seeing perspective. And you create your own player card, 2, 3, 4, or 5 questions. The more questions you put in the card and get right, the higher your payout. If you make a card with 5 questions, get all 5 of the answers correct, it's a 10x value. They also have what they call their flex play, where if you get 3 of those 5, you get a little bit of money back. You get 4 or 5, you get like 2x, and you get 5 of 5, you get 5x. So there's some soft landings there. It's really cool. But the coolest thing that they have, the promo code Awesemo will get you $100 with your first deposit. You put in $100, they'll match you with 100. You put in 10, they'll give you 10. You put in 200, they're still going to give you 100. They'll match you up to $100. That money comes out first whenever you do your wager. So we'll talk about them. We have our tradition here, Matt, where we go through each of the websites and build out a lineup. Generally, we will say, oh, is this going to be a tournament lineup or a cash lineup, or do we try to get different? Nothing silly. We just try to put together one of our better lineups, but it's a lot of fun when we kind of rotate picks and talk through our various decision points here. We'll start off with FanDuel, then we'll move to Yahoo, and then we'll move to DraftKings, and then along the way, we'll give the analysis, of course, and then if anything slipped through or we want to reiterate, we'll quickly go through, because we'll get another group wave of people starting to join in as these afternoon games wind down. We'll circle back with them. And then, of course, it is an 8:20 kickoff, so we have 58 minutes until that lock happens. All right, so let me get the old FanDuel site up here. And of course, my wife gets home right when the dog's going to go crazy. It's going to be fun.
Well, the dog's just pumped for FanDuel. I
absolutely.
Get it.
So I'm gonna let you make the first pick while I go on mute here.
Okay, that's very fair. Well, on FanDuel, especially if we're building for either small field tournaments or for cash games, because we don't have that multiplier in salary, and we do have a multiplier for that MVP pick, I tend to lean towards quarterbacks. And in this game, there is a quarterback who I certainly think has a higher median projection, a higher ceiling projection, and his name is Justin Herbert. So I think against the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, without Justin Hayden, without Minkah Fitzpatrick, without TJ Watt, we have a very different version of the Pittsburgh Steelers defense than we're typically used to seeing in this game. Doesn't mean it's impossible for Herbert to fail in this spot, but I think unless you're trying to go off the wall, unless you're being technically suboptimal, you kind of want to play Justin Herbert at the MVP spot on FanDuel. So we'll start there.
All right, so that works out well for me. Slim Layden, glad to see you. Pull up a chair, stick around for a bit. You're going to enjoy it. It's going to be one heck of a ride here. And the rest of you, hit that thumbs up. Show Slim how we do.
Did I say Justin Hayden? I didn't mean Justin Hayden.
Joe. Hey, how many times am I going to call him Joe Hayden? I did it wrong too.
Yeah.
How many times am I going to call him the San Diego Chargers tonight? Oh, over under 2.5. So there is no judgment here. This is a judgment-free zone. The one thing I do want to call out here: did you know that tonight is going to be just the 25th start of Justin Herbert's career? It feels like he's been in our lives for a lot longer than a season and a half, doesn't it?
It sure does. And you know why that is because literally from the first time he stepped onto an NFL field, he was being competitive with the Patrick Mahomes Chiefs in week 2 of his rookie year. So it feels like we've had him for a long time because he was good right from the get. That's nothing but a compliment for Justin Herbert.
All right, so with the second pick, I'm gonna go a little different here. I'm gonna take Najee Harris. We'll take the rookie running back here. He had his second 100-yard rushing game last week. The Chargers have the worst rushing DVOA throughout the entire season. They've been in the bottom 5. Now remember, DVOA moves around just a little bit because for a while it was the Chiefs that were the worst. Now it is the Chargers here. So this year, Harris has 540 snaps. Derek Watt, 49, Benny Snell, 42, Kalen Balash, 41, Anthony McFarland, who's not active tonight, had 7. That's like a 90% snap share, 85, 90%. And then when it gets to the touches, he has almost all of them. So that is a true bell cow workload. We know that he is good in running. We also know he's good in the passing game. I believe in all but 2 games, he has at least 5 targets, which is helpful. Now the half point PPR, that's not as dramatic on Yahoo, but the touchdowns are weighted a little heavier, and he has a reasonable touchdown prop today. Awesemo has him at a 53% or 56% chance of scoring a touchdown. So he will be our number 2 guy. So that leaves, we've got 3 spots left. A lot of times we'll negotiate the last 2 because sometimes we paint ourselves into a corner, but that gives us 9,500 per player. Some of the discount dandies, I usually like to call these out just so we know what we're working with here. We've got Pat Freiermuth, at 9,500, the rookie tight end. Do not pick Tristan Vizcaino. He is no longer active. It is Dustin Hopkins, who was picked up after the Washington football team released him. And then Chris Boswell, not Josh Lambo. Chris Boswell is active for the Steelers there. Jared Cook is down there. You say, oh, he's got touchdown upside. I think he only has like 4 red zone opportunities thus far this season. He does have 3 touchdowns. He sees a little more 4 or 5 targets a game. And then we're down to the will they get a target or a touch or not crew of Eric Ebron, Ray McLeod, Jalen Guyton, Donald Parham Jr., Larry Roundtree, etc., etc. So we still have a fair amount of flexibility. The next selection is yours.
Perfect. Well, I am so glad you laid out all of those players because we are going to get to them after this pick because I have to play Deontay Johnson. Really on any site, on half PPR, on full PPR sites, I am going with Deontay Johnson. The man has had 13 targets in half of his games. That we're talking about borderline RB2 level opportunity for a wide receiver 1 on this offense. And he's getting Ben Roethlisberger back. Number 5 in the NFL in target share, number 14 in air yard share. In targets per route run, he's also top 15 in the NFL, and he's top 10 in yards after the catch. So when you talk about Big Ben not having that same arm strength that he's had in the past, that's fine. Deontay Johnson can get the ball closer to the line of scrimmage, make people miss, and create big plays anyway. And he's a deep threat on top of that. So if you're talking about one player in the skill positions for the Pittsburgh Steelers that I'm excited about, even with Chase Claypool active tonight, I really love Deontay Johnson for the multiple ways that he can hit his ceiling. Let's lock him in.
All right. Now we get down to the decision points here because we only have $7,500 per player. There's not really a particular screaming value. So we know Josh Kelly is inactive tonight, but that still means there's Justin Jackson, there is Larry Roundtree, and those guys are going to share probably about 10 opportunities behind Austin Eckler. Good luck guessing which one it's going to be. Donald Parham, while he has a handful of touchdowns, that's really all he gets. He doesn't get a lot of targets. Benny Snell, complete afterthought at this point. So my question is, we have Herbert. So would we consider someone like Jalen Guyton, maybe for a big play? Josh Palmer gets a couple, like a target and a half more on average than Jalen Guyton, and they're catchable, but they're not as far down the field. So where's the upside? So I think we should pick one of those guys. Do you have a lean on them? And go ahead and break those down because those are going to be names that come up across the other 2 sites as well. Because there's not a super duper high end here. There's a solid mid-tier core, and then there's no real cheapies that are valuable. There's literally like 5 guys from each team that will be sharing 12 opportunities, and they could go to any one of them or a couple to each of them. So
and even if it is that couple to each of them scenario, it's whoever falls in the end zone that ends up in the optimal lineup sometimes. And so I do think I lean towards a day 2 pick like Josh Palmer as my first choice if we can fit him in. In week 10, he had 4 targets. I know that's not a ton, but it's creeping up there. And we haven't seen a game where he hasn't been targeted, essentially seeing that rookie easing him into the process. He's had 4 targets in 2 games since week 6. That's not spectacular, but when we're talking about low salary options, that is my first choice. We've seen Jalen Guyton over the last 2 seasons connect with Justin Herbert on big plays, so you certainly can't not play. You can certainly play him if you want to, but I do like, as we get into the double-digit weeks, to go for those day 1 and day 2 picks who haven't broken out. So my first choice would be Josh Palmer.
Oh wait, oh I thought you were going to go with Jalen Guyton there.
Oh no, I'm going to go with Josh Palmer. As we go on in the season, I do like to go with those draft picks
Okay.
who continually get usage.
Gotcha. Sorry, I was selectively listening there, and because I was hoping you'd go Josh Palmer because he's actually in my DraftKings cash lineup. You guys get us up to 100
Nice.
likes, and I will drop 10 $1 head-to-heads there over on DK. We're at 61 right now. I will say it's lucrative. Team Free Money has been giving back to the community the last few slates I've done this. So enjoy, take your chances tonight. I'm your Huckleberry. But let's move on to our final spot here. So that leaves us $9,000. I kind of think we want to go with one of the kickers. We're building more or less kind of a safer type lineup. But as we've seen in these single game slates, anything can happen. And you know, as Alex Awesemo Baker found out when he split $1 million 4 ways. What was it? He had the captain defense. And the kicker. Those were the 2 highest scores on the slate. That never happens, we've been told. Well, they play these games for a reason. So here's our kicker information. So Chris Boswell has just 12 attempts from 50 plus yards in his first 87 games. This season, he's had 6 and made them all. All of a sudden, you know, if 6 years in the league and now he's going to kick 50 yarders, I like it. Because we have Dustin Hopkins. He was released by Washington after 6 seasons and change, only 14 of 27 from 50 plus in his career. I like the people that have the opportunity to at least go out there for a 50 yarder because that's worth 5 points. That's almost like a goal line plunge. And that's something where I think we want to look to Boswell here. That would be my choice. Do you have a strong lean on either one of these guys?
I almost never have a strong feeling about kickers, EMAC. I'm going to be honest with you. I play the kickers that fit, and then I find out what happens when they score points or don't.
Exactly. So we'll file this one away. It's out there, but it's Herbert, Najee Harris, Deontay Johnson, Palmer, and then Boswell. So let's move on over here to Yahoo. Now we've got some free articles on the homepage here. I've got 2. I did a big breakdown by position, both teams, ranked the full player pool. That's for DK and FanDuel. Matt's got his free article up there with the breakdown, focusing a little more on DraftKings, but throwing in some FanDuel as well. I've got a Yahoo-centric article up there where I list the superstars. So that's their version of the multiplier. And their scoring system is half PPR. They do have defenses, but they don't have kickers. So it's the opposite of FanDuel that's half PPR but has kickers but does not have defense. So these guys they're pretty interesting here on how you build stuff out. The way their pricing is, it's not that incremental. So you can make a good lineup and leave $6 on the table. It's not that big of a deal. You want to start focusing more on the points rather than what we've been trained to do and wring every dollar out of our budget in there. So I'm going to drop the link on to that one. Tristan Carroll, I would go with Boswell over Hopkins, sort of just on the breakdown that I just gave. If you just tuned in, or if I'm getting to that late, that would be the answer. So I will start us off here.
Can I add one thing to that?
Absolutely.
Honestly, with kickers, it should be about what is in the rest of your lineup and what kind of contest you're playing. Usually the answer of which kicker do I play has to do with the context of everything I just broke down. So Tristan, if your lineup includes a bunch of Steelers running backs, you probably want to go with Boswell because that correlates more often with a positive score from those players. But if you have Eckler or even Herbert or Allen, you might want to say, hey, I think the Chargers are going to score a lot of points here in this game. I want to play more Chargers. There's no hard and fast rules in a single game slate, but in general, I want to positively correlate my kickers with the rest of my lineup.
Excellent. All right. We're going to start off here on Yahoo. So I still want to go with Austin Eckler in our superstar spot, and we'll kind of build out from there. There's definitely an argument for Najee Harris as well as for Justin Herbert. Those I think are our 3 best options. Keenan Allen, We'll look to him. I'd like to get him into our utility. He's 24, so he's $6 more than Deontay Johnson. He's also $2 more than teammate Mike Williams. Since their week 7 bye week, Allen has 35 targets. So that's pretty impressive, 11, 13, and 11. And while he just has 2 touchdowns on the year, Mike Williams was getting all his production early. Every time he touched the ball, he took it to the end zone, it seemed like, for those first 5 weeks of the season. That slowed down, but he's still a decent option, and he's one of their better red zone options as well. So looping all the way back, the reason I'm looking at Austin Ekeler, as you mentioned, they're without the Steelers defense, without Minka Fitzpatrick, without TJ Watt, without Joe Hayden. That's one key defender at each level. That's going to be an issue. And they also don't have Isaiah Loudermilk on the defensive line, who's out as well. So I like Ekeler. He contributes in all aspects of the game. He's got double-digit fantasy points in all but one. While he is not, overly flashy, he still has, I think, 81 or more combined yards in every game, or a touchdown in all but one. And that one game was the one where he didn't get double-digit fantasy points. So I think he's a nice building block here. So let's start out with him. You don't have a major objection on that, or do you think there's a clear-cut superstar here?
Oh, I don't think there's a clear-cut superstar. Now, it is a little bit like FanDuel, because there is no addition to your salary, that sometimes it just simply makes sense for getting the most raw projected points into your superstar slot. And often that is a quarterback, but I'm not going to quibble about a player like Ekeler, who is a player who can often get 30 touches, or 30 opportunities, I should say, that's targets and rushes overall in a game. And even in a very negative game script, you're going to see him get 5 to 10 targets almost every game. Honestly, I think I want to just rack up the guaranteed touches. I think I want to just go with Najee Harris, who continues to be at a record pace for a rookie running back. We saw him get 26 carries and 4 targets last week. That's after 25 opportunities the week before, 29 opportunities the week before that, 31 opportunities the week before that. So at this point, I know in typical slates, we may not just play a running back and a running back, but when you're talking about the possibility of 60 opportunities in this game and limited star power on the defenses, I think we got to go with it. The Chargers have been susceptible against the run, and Najee Harris has been very good at an evaded tackles per touch basis when he gets the ball in the receiving game as well. So I have no qualms going running back here. Let's lock those both in.
Okay, I think that's good. That leaves us $18 per option, or per player after that. Now, the discount dandies here are a little bit different than the others. So Yahoo, the minimum is $10. Not all $10 players are created equal by any stretch. And I say that all the time in basketball. In football, it's very similar. So you can have someone like, a Derek Watt, an Eric Ebron, a Ray McLeod. Now we're back to the guys that might get just 2 or 3 targets. Then we've got Jared Cook, who's kind of interesting at 13. Would expect him to get around 5. He's not overly flashy. He has 2 games with more than 50 yards. One was the season opener, and then one was a month into the season. He only has 2 touchdowns. This is year 17 for him. So he's got that veteran steadying presence. Do we need that for our roster tonight? I'm not sure.
Yeah, that little Michael secret sauce. That sounds great.
$3 more, we can get a Chase Claypool in here. How do you feel about Chase Claypool? Because just $2 above him is Deontay Johnson.
I love Deontay Johnson. Basically every slate I can play Deontay Johnson. I love Deontay Johnson, but I will say it's really encouraging to see Claypool back after 1 week. I was concerned there was wording in the way that the injury status was reported with Claypool that it was going to be a multi-week injury, almost season ending. So the fact that he can play is great, but I just worry for a big play threat like Claypool to not have breakaway speed, to not be able to get up to the top of his jump. I'm leaning Johnson pretty hard. That said, in a showdown, in a single game slate, I'm fine doing whatever we want to do.
All right, let's go with Claypool. just out
Okay.
of curiosity. That will give us $20 each. We can still get Johnson. We could go with a Mike Williams. We could go with the Keenan Allen. We still have the flexibility for that. The only people we can, so we can pick anybody else on the board up to Keenan Allen and still have $16 left. So we still have a lot of choices here.
Okay, great. Well, I'm going to make it a little bit easier for you. I do think we have sort of a balanced roster right now. So we kind of have to make a choice right now if we want to lean towards one team scoring significantly more than the other. And I do think at this point, I want to kind of go for balance. And so I think I'll go for Jared Cook. And that'll help us open up the rest
Okay.
of our roster. And, we're only banking on 3 to 5, maybe 6 or 7 targets for Jared Cook. That would be a ceiling scenario for Jared Cook. We obviously need a touchdown, but at $13, I feel like he's a pretty solid value and he's being looked at in the red zone. His 10 yards receiving was really scary last week. Obviously, that's the lowest he's had all season, and he's getting up there in age. But I still think that Jared Cook can be a valuable contributor. I'm only looking at him on a 1-game slate, but I like him as a salary saving option, and he's in my pool this week.
All right, so we could go Keenan Allen or Mike Williams. We're going to leave money on the table. We could go one of those guys and upgrade or change Claypool to Deontay. I think the popular build is going to be Keenan Allen, Cook, Harris, Eckler, Deontay, because that leaves $1 left. And I think that's where a lot of people are going to land because they don't want to, leave money unspent. And then it's going to be a question of who do they put in their superstar spot. And so I think there'll be a fair amount of overlap there. I would not be opposed if you're strong on Deontay going to him, but then going to Mike Williams instead of Keenan Allen, leaving a few bucks on the table and finding some differentiation that way. Because Deontay, how could you leave Deontay off? I don't want to go Claypool and Mike Williams. Now we're just betting on touchdowns. There's not enough volume to support it. So I would kind of I would prefer if I'm choosing a touchdown. I think Williams is a better odds of that with his quarterback than Claypool does. And then I don't want to go, I'd rather back it down to Deontay Johnson. That leaves $3 on the table. Other people are going to worry about trying to finagle some better play or some different combination. I'm okay with leaving $3 on the table. No problem there.
Yeah, I think that's very nice. And you know what? With Mike Williams, we've seen a target floor that we haven't been accustomed to. So even though the ceiling games have not been there since really week 5 against Cleveland, when he had that crazy 16 target game where he went off for 8 for 165, but still he's had 5 targets in every single game this season. They were targeting him on fades in the red zone. There's still a clear role for him in this offense that there wasn't prior to this season. So yes, Keenan Allen's been soaking up that opportunity like we knew he would eventually, but I don't hate going to Mike Williams instead.
All right, let's go on over here to DraftKings, and then we'll talk some prize pools. We have quite a bit of time here. I see some of our chat is having some fun with saying that, and this is not true. There was an error in our internal alert system that said that Claypool was inactive. That was pulling from a last week's game, not this week's game. Claypool is active. We're all good. It did cause a little kerfluffle at that moment, but we're good. But hit that like button. We just got up to 101. I'm going to drop in 10 $1 head-to-heads there on DK, just because team free money. We're feeling like we're in a giving mood. I will let you start off with our captain here. So of course, DK, a little different than the others. It's full PPR. They have a much more dramatic salary floor. It's not against or it's not out of the question to literally take someone that's like $200 or $400 and just plan on a likely zero and hope you're hoping, hey, if I get 2 targets, I don't even need them to catch. If they got some targets, I'm feeling like, okay, well, I got a little value out of it anyway at that point. So there's some extremes going on there. And then their twist on it, in addition to being full PPR, is it's a 50% multiplier on the salary as well as the score that your designated top person gets. So we will let you go first here with this one.
Okay, I'm glad you broke that down because that is why I'm picking the player that I am. I just broke down why I'm okay moving away from Keenan Allen to Mike Williams. And it's the same reason why I'm okay playing him in a captain spot on DraftKings. Maybe in a cash game, you're probably going to go elsewhere here. But still, I like a player who had, even in their down weeks, has had 5 targets, 5 targets, 5 targets, 6 targets. The production, not necessarily there, but even in 2 receptions in week 9, he still has 58 yards receiving. That screams big play receiver. And based on the first 5 weeks of the season, that's what we know Mike Williams can do. He hasn't been on the injury report as of late. And Justin Herbert likes to go deep into Williams in a way that he does not like to with Allen. So I'm going to go with Williams in the captain spot.
All right. If we're going that route, then I think clearly we need to go with Herbert there and capitalize on this. Maybe we'll luck into 1, maybe 2 touchdowns. That's not. And again, we're playing showdown. We've got to get lucky because the incremental change in points and how many spots they move you up and down these giant tournaments is phenomenal. It's out of control. And when people lose their bonuses or whatever on DK, you know, that 1.5 or 3 points, depending on what the bonus is, it swings wildly. So let's go with Herbert. We'll hand that back to you.
Okay. Now, this is a little bit of a macro strategy idea, but I want to lock up a ton of the Chargers' touches and a large percentage of their touchdowns because we know Keenan Allen, although he is a positive regression candidate in the touchdown category, this is not an area that he has excelled in his career. So let's go with Austin Eckler and say that, okay, we get a lot of the Chargers passing touchdowns. If Mike Williams scores, we get double the score for those passing touchdowns. And if any kind of rushing or passing touchdown to Eckler happens, we get that as well. Obviously, a Keenan Allen score is going to hurt us a little bit, but I feel like we're locking up a lot of the possible scoring here for the Chargers. Let's go with that.
All right. And in that vein, I am going to recommend that we go with Pat Freiermuth, who it's so fun to type out Freiermuth and Roethlisberger. I'm actually going to be sad when Roethlisberger is out of the league just because I can, like Giannis Antetokounmpo, I can, from muscle memory, type their names out. If you asked me to spell it, I'd probably stumble over it, but I've typed their names out so many times. It's not an issue for me to type them out. But Freiermuth is a little bit easier. Once you've done it a couple times, you're just like, oh, it's the, E before I, because of course that's, how it should always be.
He is EIER. That's right. Freiermuth.
EIERMUTH.
Glorious.
Freiermuth.
That is glorious.
He has some touchdowns, which is nice. He does have 3 touchdowns in his last 3 games, just 4 on the season. But even with Eric Ebron back last week after missing a month, Freiermuth had 9 targets, a career high 9 targets, as well as the season high. But I like him in here. That gives us another, because we're going to want some Steelers here. We can't go too spendy because it won't work to get a Najee Harris. We could go with an extreme punt still, as we discussed. But now we have 2 spots where if we wanted to say, you know what, we're gonna go all out here and go with the Johnson. We'd still have 2,700. We could look for a Parham. We could go with a Guyton. We could take some other shots here with reasonable plays. That'd be about as expensive as we could go. We could still work it in with Keenan Allen, and then one guy we haven't mentioned other than how to spell his name, Ben Roethlisberger, not really an option for us tonight. I'm sure we'll have to break him down special on the analysis since we didn't cover him here in any of these. But you've got 2 spots left, 57.50 for each.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with a kicker here. And we kind of have to decide, again, where we want the majority of our roster, which team we want to have a majority of our roster to include. And I think we want to have like a Chargers heavy build here. So I think we're going to go with Dustin Hopkins. Again, no strong feelings about the kickers. This would be a situation where the Chargers score significantly more points than the Steelers. But hey, we have to build lineups for a specific game flow in order to win here. So Dustin Hopkins is going to be my pick.
All right. Let's put him in. Why can't? Oh, not because I'm not scrolling down far enough. So he's got 3,800. So we got 7,700. I think by default we probably just want to go Claypool and move on. But that is, a dynamic playmaker. Will they get him the ball? We'll see. He is able to do things after the catch. He just hasn't had nearly the opportunities that he did last year when he came on. But a lot of that's because Johnson and now Freiermuth are taking them along with a functional running back that can actually catch the ball and not just fall over. Sorry, Jalen Samuels. So there we are. We've got Mike Williams, Herbert, Eckler, Freiermuth, Hopkins, and Claypool. So let's get we've got what do we got? 20. Oh, we got like 28 minutes. We got plenty of time here. So let's loop back on the analysis. Then we'll talk in depth about our sponsor, Prize Picks. We've got a whole bunch of opportunities out there today. Key things, if you haven't signed up yet, you're going to want to. When you go over there, make your first deposit, use the promo code Awesemo. They will give you up to a $100 deposit match. That money comes out first when you make your play in your first contest over there. It is prop betting, basically, with the fantasy twist on it. So this is available in a lot of states that do not have sports betting because they've done it in a way where they comply with all the rules. The only big rule that they have that sometimes trips people up: you can only have one player on on one of the questions in one card. So like if we really wanted the Deontay Johnson yardage and Deontay Johnson fantasy points, the overs, we'd have to make two cards because we can only have one Deontay Johnson question. You can only have one Najee Harris question, et cetera. That's really the only limitation that they have. They do have enough picks up there that we can do single game contest for tonight. They have second half lines as well. So they want you out there having fun. They have an excellent app. And then I like to use the website myself because I'm more of a computer person. But and these phones are so darn tiny. God, I can't believe it. Okay, boomer. Jeez, I'm going to need bifocals here at some point, but that's not today. Today is talking about someone else that's going to need some bifocals in the near future. That is Ben Roethlisberger, the aged one. Is he hanging on a little too long? Potentially. Is he more than a game manager at this point? I'm not sure. Has he scored more than 16 fantasy points in any game this season? No, he has not. Ben Roethlisberger, ladies and gentlemen.
Hey, I think it's somewhat nice to know about a narrow range of outcomes because sometimes in fantasy football, the range of outcomes feels so wide, so variable that even just describing the range of outcomes feels stupid because it's just like, yeah, anything could happen. But for Ben Roethlisberger, it's been between 10.9 fantasy points and 16.2 fantasy points in every game this season in typical scoring. Obviously, there are some bonuses here and there depending on the site you're playing. But honestly, with Ben Roethlisberger, we've seen him go over 300 yards once this year. We have not seen him go over 3 passing touchdowns. We have not seen him go over 5 rushing yards. We certainly know that part of his game is long past gone. And he's between 56 and 72% completion percentage. So there really is a narrow range of outcomes here. I do think that it's possible that players find the end zone in a way that we haven't seen, where he's just hyper efficient for one game on a single game slate. But in general, in most of if you play this slate over and over and over again, you're probably getting about 10 to 15 fantasy points. Where if you're playing a tournament and you're starting a quarterback who has such a high salary compared to the rest of the field, that is not a score you have to have on your roster. Not saying he is a must stay away play tonight. You can certainly pair him, especially when you have a pass catcher of his at that captain or MVP or superstar spot, but he's not someone I'm excited to play tonight.
All right. Running backs, we kind of hit on Najee Harris. He is the running back. There's really nothing to go there. Outside of Deontay Johnson and Chase Claypool, is there anything you want to mention? We have James Washington out there getting a fair number of plays. Not many looks. Ben's not particularly accurate down the field anymore. We also have Ray McLeod, who resurfaced in the last game with 12 targets. He has 22 on the season. I don't mind him as a super cheapie. I'm hoping for 4 or 5, which would be more than his 2 or 3 he was getting. Maybe this is like a recency bias, or oh hey, how are we going to use this guy? But Claypool is back. He was gone in the last game. Do you would you go with either of those guys? Where would you be above or below the field? What are your thoughts on those beyond tertiary receivers?
Yeah, I do like those kinds of plays in showdown slates. So I am above the field on Ray McLeod, but I will say it's not necessarily because I believe that the 12 targets is some sort of signal, right? I don't think that Mason Rudolph and the way that he's utilizing the Pittsburgh Steelers offense is the way that Ben Roethlisberger is going to. They just make different reads. And honestly, I think Ray McLeod is the gadget hybrid horizontal player in this offense. It certainly doesn't mean he can't hit. And we saw that in certain game plans where nothing else was working or nothing downfield was available, they'll go to him. But I think that more likely than not, he's getting 5 to 7 opportunities. But even then, he's pretty solid. I do like him more on FanDuel than DraftKings right now. I'm much more above the field on FanDuel in my latest crunch. That said, he's simply not unplayable tonight. James Washington is tougher with Claypool back. I was excited to see him get a full snap share, 87.7% of snaps, ran 48 routes, got 6 targets last week. That's a full-time player's kind of stat line for James Washington, but I don't think we're going to see that with Claypool back in the mix. And worst case scenario, we could see sort of a 50-50 split in that wide receiver 2 role opposite Deontay Johnson. That just boosts my confidence in Johnson for lineups that sort of play towards that game plan.
So you're saying he did not go to college with this quarterback that's starting tonight, James Washington?
Oh, you gotta love the Oklahoma State shower narrative. Of course. That's a big part of it.
Oh, good times. All right. Tight ends would you X out Ebron? With Ben's history of going to the tight end position, even when he probably shouldn't, year after year after year.
Man, so Ebron is a player that is currently burning the bottom of my best ball lineup. So I'm going to try to take the bias out of this, but we did see him return in week 10 to a 30% snap share, which in my opinion, it just sucks the ceiling out of Pat Freiermuth. Doesn't mean he can't hit in a 1-game slate. It just means that those 2 targets, those 2 receptions, the 16 routes he ran are possibly at the expense of Pat Freiermuth. So I'm not saying either of them are stay away options, but it just makes both of them feel a little bit more iffy. You still like Freiermuth more. If Kyle Pitts didn't exist at the position, honestly, we would be going much crazier about how well Pat Freiermuth has come on in his rookie season as a tight end. It's a really hard position to hit in your first year, but still with Ebron in the fold, clearly playing a quarter of the passing game snaps, it just takes away from the probability of either hitting. Ebron's not exciting, but I guess you could still play him.
All right. Before we move on to the home team here, I want to remind everybody, we've got 1,000 people watching. Thank you. That is phenomenal right now. We've got 133 likes. I think we can narrow that gap a little bit. Let's give us up to 200 here. That would be very nice. We also have a promo here, Black Friday. We're coming in on these ad campaigns as well. So our NFL Express weekly pass is the best way to get yourself in the door here at Awesemo for NFL DFS. We're giving all new users the opportunity to get it for just $1 for the first week. The promo code is stuffing. Now, within this, you get the player rankings, the ownership rankings, everything that we have to offer for showdown and single game contests. Now, that's going to be important because for Thanksgiving, we have not 1, not 2, but 3 showdown games or slates. You also get the Sunday and Monday night showdown slates in that as well. For those, you get the actual player pool projections and player ownership or rostership, if you will. And for the other stuff for main slates, you get the rankings, which basically it just tiers people where they are. And it's easy enough to reverse engineer what you're doing. And you want to know who's the chalk and who's not. That's the main things you want to know. If you want to know the specifics, then you can get the premium advanced package. But the express package, just $1, promo code stuffing. That deal goes away on Friday because that's when it's no longer turkey time It's Santa Claus time. All right, Justin Herbert. What are we going to do here? Is he your 1, 2, or 3 play? Is he above or below the running backs for you?
Oh man,
we're just building
of
one
course,
lineup.
If you're building one lineup, obviously the contest you're playing really matters, right? Because if you're playing a cash game lineup, you're trying to get the median projection. If you're playing a tournament lineup, you're going for the ceiling. That said, particularly on FanDuel, I'm very bullish on Justin Herbert. I think the salary is not too high. I'm actually over the field right now on Herbert and Eckler. I just like the quality of this offense in general. There are obviously scenarios where this fails here, but Herbert has just been excellent over his first 2 seasons. And I'm seeing a player who, although he had a 13 fantasy point game last week, we know he has a 30-point ceiling. The underlying metrics pretty solid, top 15 in the NFL in adjusted yards per attempt. When he gets in the red zone, a place where young quarterbacks typically struggle, he's 6th in red zone completion percentage. And one of the things that playerprofiler.com measures is the accuracy of his passes and catchable pass rate. He's number 2 in the NFL. So he's putting the ball in places where his receivers can make things happen. I like him in all platforms, particularly on FanDuel. I'm super bullish.
All right. We've gone over Eckler pretty well. Is there anything to mention about Roundtree or Jackson, Josh, or whichever? Kelly's out? Okay. I get confused between all the Joe Kellys, the Josh Kellys, the Josh Jackson, the Justin Jackson, all the Jacksons that play basketball, the Jackson 5. It's
tough out there. I forgot, man. We got to include the Jackson 5. That's definitely a factor.
Well, we gotta have a musical reference in here at some point, just for you.
Justin Jackson, yeah, he hasn't had a opportunity since week 8. So in that case, I'm not worried there. Let's check Roundtree real quick on his usage. The bottom line here is telling you that this is Austin Eckler's backfield. Roundtree had 5 carries last week, 1 in week 9. The most that Roundtree has played in snap share over the last 3 games for the Chargers is 14.5% of snaps. This is Eckler's backfield. You are really hoping for something with Roundtree. Yes, he scored last week, so I guess it's not impossible, but lightning rarely strikes twice, I guess.
All right. The wide receivers we kind of hit on pretty well, I think. Tight ends, I think we've covered pretty well. One last, Premium Slack asked one more time, hey, sorry I missed it. Can you give me a quick Ray McLeod hit? And then we're going to talk some prize picks here.
Yeah, Ray McLeod, I mean, he's getting more attention because he saw 12 targets last week, which I believe was a career high in his 4-year career. Just 1 in the red zone, was able to make 9 receptions for 63 yards. So on a yards per reception basis, that's not super exciting. Just tells you the way that the Mason Rudolph Steelers offense tends to run. He's more of a hybrid gadget role, tends to be their horizontal option, while Najee Harris is their sort of downhill rushing option. But still, in a showdown slate, single game slate, you can play him on a team that tends to lean towards the pass. Their 39 pass attempts per game ranks 6th in the NFL, and you know he's going to be out there. So not super exciting, but a low salary access to a team that passes a lot.
All right, let's talk a little bit about prize picks. A reminder, again, these are prop-based contests. A nice way to research them on your own if you do not have access to the Awesemo projections and information. You can go over to Odds Shopper, that is our sister site. You can go over to Shop NFL. You can sort on that. You can pick whatever state you're in, but if you don't have sports wagering in your state, doesn't matter. You can just still filter, and you can look at best ROI. You can look at likeliest to win. In this case, we want more often than not, we're going to want likeliest to win, because the ROI is going to be different here for us on price picks. There is no VIG, right? There's no juice on one side or the other. Now, they sort of implicitly get that by where they're setting their lines. So fear not, they're going to get theirs, but it's, your 1-for-1 head-to-head bet is you bet and you get it back. Whereas you might have to bet 120 to get 100 back, or 150 to get 100 back. Here, it's just like, no, here's our number. Which ones do you want? Well, any question plays. over there. They also have over a dozen sports on any given day. They have all the esports, CS:GO. They have League of Legends, all that fun stuff where you can pick player kills and I don't know, demon exorcisms or whatever it is that they have over there on League of Legends. No, I think that towers, do they destroy towers or something like that? Anyway,
I want to do an over under demon exorcism. I don't even know anything about it, but I just want to bet it now.
So there we go. So we've got all the good clutch kills, things like that. Yeah, these games sound pretty violent and otherworldly, but they have all sorts of sports. They've got highlight on there, and then they've got all the main sports. And the really nice thing is they do have a lot of second half contests. Their basketball product is outstanding, and they go deeper into the player pool that sometimes the other wagering sites aren't going to be doing, and that's more fun, right? Because you can try to find the edge of our information versus theirs. Now, sometimes there's going to be definite stayaways. Sometimes there's going to be unders, or sometimes there's going to be overs that we look. So Matt, I put all these on the run sheet if you need to see them. I know you probably have vast displays of information in front of you, so we'll kind of walk through it real quick here. So for the passing yards, and guys, I pulled these 45 minutes before the show, so they may have tweaked a little bit, but there was really no crazy inactive news, so these should be directionally correct. So we have Ben Roethlisberger. Price Picks had him at 220.5. Awesemo has him at 253.7. That's one where I'd consider taking the over. I don't feel great about it, but I would consider taking the over, because if we look at Justin Herbert, Prize Picks has him at 265, Awesemo has him at 275. There's not enough wiggle room there for me to be interested. There are other plays that we'll talk about that I have more interest in than those. But how do you feel about that Ben Roethlisberger?
I've said this on many shows before, but when the Awesemo projections are vastly different than a prop line, I hate to just call it trust the math, but that's really what we're talking about here. Ben Roethlisberger is not an exciting DFS play. We talked about why that is, but when we have a prop line that makes no sense compared to his passing yardage projection, then we just got to go with it. Honestly, this is a great way to play certain players who don't always make sense in DFS lineups. Often these non-pass catching running backs, your Nick Chubbs, your Derrick Henrys of the world, and non-smash spots, they still smash their rushing yards prop. So not to go on a full tangent here, but I really like this Ben Roethlisberger over, especially compared to the Justin Herbert line, which feels kind of like a push, a stay away for me.
All right. The completions and interceptions, there didn't seem to be enough wiggle room. It's 21.5 for Roethlisberger. We have him over at 23.7 for completions. Interceptions, Prize Picks says, more than half. Awesemo has a 63% chance that Roethlisberger throws an interception. That's getting closer to where I want, but I'd like something closer that we are projecting for in that 70% range or higher, especially since we don't have to worry about the juice on this. Now, when we get to rushing yards, we have some questions here. So Najee Harris going against the worst rushing defense in the league. Prize Picks had him at 75.5. Awesemo had him at just 67.5. Knowing what you know, and you just said you trust the boss, the guy who's won millions of dollars doing this and who actually bases this stuff on math and science and data analytic principles. What does your gut say? Because, that's what it all comes down to. Could you live with yourself taking the under on a Najee Harris rushing prop?
Man, so if he gets 4 yards a carry, he needs 19 carries to get past that 75.5. That feels very, very doable against the Los Angeles Chargers. So I'm not going to say that this is a stay away option, but right now, the way I have Najee Harris projected, it would be over.
Okay.
That's tough. I think that's close enough where I'm going to go with my projections. Oof, over the big boss. That's tough.
All right. Moving down, we've got a bunch of receiving ones here. Now, the ones that had the biggest differentials, Mike Williams was at 49.5 on Prize Picks. Awesemo has him at 69.2. I would tend towards the over. We're betting on a long. Does he get a long play? Is more or less what we're betting on. We talked about how there's some key members missing on the defense for Pittsburgh at each of the levels with Watt, well, I'm going to blank on all their other names with Hayden and then with
Fitzpatrick. Yeah.
Fitzpatrick and Loudermilk. But I would like the over on Mike Williams.
Yeah. He's at 14.8 yards per reception this year. He is the definition of a big play threat. So if he has 5 receptions, that's 74 yards. If he has 4 receptions, that's 59, 60 yards. Obviously, he can get just 3 catches in any matchup, especially with that 5 target floor. But I think if you want to just do that math out, a lot of the times he gets well over that if he just gets 3 catches. Yeah, I think I'm going with the over as well there. I like that a lot.
All right. And then Austin Eckler was at 30.5. We have him for 37. That's for as much passing work as he does get. He doesn't always rack up the yardage, but last year we saw him with multiple 100-yard games. So it's not out of the question by any stretch. That one felt low. The Awesemo number felt a little low for me. I would have liked him to be close. Like if I'm thinking about it, it's more like 48, 49, 50, somewhere around there with the missing defensive players. But I am not a computer, nor am I a math major. So, your mileage may vary.
I mean, he's sitting there at 4.3 receptions per game for 37.8 receiving yards per game. Compare that to a 30.5 receiving yard prop line. I think Awesemo's just kind of saying, hey, we expect his season average in this matchup against a defense that is better in name brand than they may be in actual personnel tonight. That's an over for me.
I would agree because, it's no longer Blitzburg. It's not the steel curtain, right? It's the Pittsburgh Steelers who are missing several
I mean,
Pro
they
Bowlers.
still have good players. I still think it's an above average defense. I think it's just closer to average than it is to elite, especially tonight.
All right. And then Jared Cook popped. He's the kind of guy where I'm a little nervous about, but PrizePicks has him just at 24 yards. The 30 that Awesemo has him on feels probably appropriate. We're betting on 3 catches, though, is a better way to say that. So he might be someone that we would be better served looking at the fantasy points for. And his fantasy points are at 7. Awesemo has him at 8.1. So if we get, 3 catches, 40 yards, that gets us there, or 4 catches, 30 yards, that, we're right there. It might be a little easier to get that than the plus the touchdown comes into play, and he has about a 30% chance of getting a touchdown tonight, which is the sort of the difference maker. So I think I would rather have his fantasy point prop. I'm still a little tepid on that, but between that and his receiving prop, I'd rather go that route.
I think I'm with you there. I will say that I think one of the big edges right now with our player props tool, and honestly with our projections, the Awesemo projections are particularly strong in the secondary options and those mid-tier options for NFL players, and the prop lines aren't necessarily quite as strong for those players. So I tend to trust the projections even more once we go to those 3 to 5 reception type players.
All right. I am about to upload my lineup, so we got plenty of time here. Let's continue looking down at some of our props. The receptions they're all even, so I don't even want to take them. Deontay Johnson 6 versus 6.3, Harris 4 versus 4.2, Freiermuth 3 versus 3.5 versus 3.4. Not worth it. But the touchdowns today for both Najee Harris and Austin Eckler are actually anytime touchdowns. So we have that means rushing or receiving. So Najee Harris needs to get a touchdown. Awesemo has him with a 43% chance of getting a rushing touchdown and a 13% chance of getting a passing touchdown or receiving touchdown. So that's about 56%. Eckler, however, 67% chance of a rushing touchdown, 20% chance of a receiving touchdown. That's goodness. 87%. That's not a lock. There's a reason they play these games. He does have, I believe, 9 on the year, 5 rushing and 4 receiving, if memory serves. So that is an intriguing spot, to say the least.
Let's go. Lock it in. 1 touchdown for Austin Eckler. I'm trying to see how many games where he has not had a touchdown this year, and it's 3.
Yeah, I think he had 1 multiple touchdown game. Yeah, and then the others were single touchdowns.
I'm seeing two multi-touchdown
Who did
games,
he? Okay.
but yeah, look, he's having a fantastic year. Uh, third in fantasy points per game on a per touch basis. He's as efficient as ever in yards created per touch, which is yards gained past those original blocked yards by the offensive line. 10th in the NFL, sixth in total yards created. He's always been an evaded tackles monster. And just as we've seen, even on huge touches, his 33.1% evaded tackle rate ranks top 20 in the NFL. I love the idea that he's going to get in the end zone because you know what he can do as a receiver. You know there's a floor there, but he has really proven that he can be a quality goal line back this year. His 5 goal line carries is 11th in the NFL as well. He's simply a bell cow.
All right. And then the fantasy points, let's see. Mike Williams is at 12. Awesemo has him at 15. Roethlisberger at 14. We have him at 16. Deontay Johnson, 14 and a half, 16 and a half. Eckler, 18. We have him at 21. Justin Herbert, 19 and a half. We have him at 21 and a half. Those would be the handful I would be considering. Eckler would be the one, but again, I want to use him for the touchdown. So I would need to create a different card to be able to use him twice. Same thing with Deontay Johnson. If we want to use him elsewhere, we'll have to tweak that. But those are the key things to remember. We'll see if there's any questions here in chat. But a reminder, we got 700 of you left. Come on, hit that like button on the way out here. We got 2,000 likes. An Awesemo record, 2,000 likes on the early show. We can get at least 200 on this one. Come on. Don't let Josh Engelman make fun of me in the coffee room at Awesemo headquarters here. We'll see if there's any questions. Oh, we didn't talk about onslaughts. Today, I don't feel like we really need to do an onslaught. There's enough players that can score on either side. It doesn't seem overly lopsided. While clearly the Chargers are in a spot where they could hang 30, 35 points just because Pittsburgh's missing key players and they have a really good offense. But they, anything can happen any given Sunday. It just, would it, we didn't think that Taylor would get 4 rushing touchdowns and a receiving touchdown because he can't catch passes against the best defense in the league today on the road in the Ralph in November. Yet it happened. So while I'm not expecting a retro Ben Roethlisberger performance, he could get 2 touchdowns, maybe even 3 if things work out well or they get some short fields, etc. I didn't force any 4-2s or 5-1s on either way. I have the last few slates. I chose not to on this slate. I also did not set any rules this slate because I don't care if I have Big Ben with his receivers, and by default I'm going to get the San Diego there. That's the second time I've done that. 2.5 is the problem. Am I going to go over that I know I'll get his pass catchers by default because it's either going to be Eckler or an actual pass catcher in the lineup with him. And
I will say one rule I set was one of Freiermuth, Ebron, and Zach Gentry, who we haven't really mentioned, but he's a tight end. I don't want more than one of them. I guess it's possible both fall in the end zone, but super improbable.
Yeah, and I didn't play anybody that was scoring that few points, so I didn't have to worry about that one.
That's fair too.
I ended up making 80 lineups tonight, so not as many as I normally. Well, 81, I guess, because we have ours that we put in the contest. Yep, just about game time. 2 minutes here. How do you edit your entry on Prize Picks? If the first game has not started, you can go click on your card, and I think you can still change it. That I'm not 100% sure. I've never actually done that because I usually take so damn long in deliberating and making my cards. It takes a while for me to get there. That's a good question. I will also test that out and see if that's a possibility. But maybe it's once you hit submit, you've hit submit. That I don't know for sure. You could also reach out to support@prizepicks.com, and I bet they could answer that one for you pretty quickly. All right, 1 minute to go. Faded the heck out of Harris tonight. I don't know how I feel. That's what Brad Turner says. Well, you're going to know probably around halftime.
Right. Well, I mean, I will say with Harris, it could be one of those 25 touches for 75 yards and no scores. But the Chargers have, in general, been more susceptible on the ground than through the air. I'm not playing the slate that way, but the way that DFS tournament winners often play is they create lineups that go for a version of the game that most others didn't expect. So I could see it here. Certainly could.
All right. Well, with that, we are at lock. So where can they find you on Twitter, Matt?
I am on Twitter at Draftaholic.
Draft.
This was so funny, Mac. Very happy to be here.
Yeah, that's what I liked it. Now I'm at EMAC DFS because I wasn't quick enough to get EMAC. Although I am EMAC on most DFS sites because I've been there long enough. Every now and then there's somebody on FanDuel that's EMAC that does well, but they have a bunch of numbers behind their name. So I get all these congratulations. I'm like, it's not me. Sadly, good for them. in spirit, I'm rooting for them, but not the same EMAC. I'm your old pal, not that guy. But in any event, we're going to get on out of here. We're starting this all over again tomorrow, 6:30. Josh Engelman is going to get you going with the process show. It is Thanksgiving week. I just heard we are doing 3 hours before kickoff for Thanksgiving. Wow. And then we're also doing a live before lock for the final game. That will be myself, Nick will be back, as well Terry, T. McBee. I have to work on Friday, so I said, yeah, I'm not going to be doing anything crazy on Thanksgiving because I got to get up early on Friday. But hey, sure, I can host a show. So that'll be some fun there. But we've got all sorts of goodness for you guys and a 10-game NBA slate kicking things off, plus Monday Night Football. We're in the thick of it. We got the holidays. We got the DFS sports. Let's have some fun. Awesemo promo code stuffing gets you a $1 for 1 week of the Awesemo Express package. With that, gamers, good luck.